Hello everyone, it's Angie here, and welcome back to the channel. Today I want to tell you a story. A few years ago, we were driving home from a concert in London. We were in mid-Wales driving through a tiny little village. It was about 1 in the morning and pitch black, and so the only light came from the car's headlights. The road was winding, bumpy and very narrow. We didn't actually know where we were, relying on just the sat-nav to guide us home and hoping that it was updated to include the rural backroads of mid-Wales. Perhaps we wouldn't have been as shocked as we were by what happened next, had it not been so dark, or we not so tired, or had we been somewhere a little more familiar. As we whipped around yet another corner, the headlights quickly illuminated a small house with trees and an overgrown hedge. Not an unusual sight. What was unusual was what was next to the house, half in the shadows, prowling out. In front of a wall separating the house from the strip of grass next to the road was a huge dog. Its fur as black as the night we were driving in, scruffy, teeth slightly showing, almost as if it were as surprised by us as we were of it, eyes glowing as the headlights briefly shone on the animal. I only saw it for a second, but the terrifying sight of this creature lurking on the rural roads in the dead of night has burned itself into my brain. I remember yelping in shock, but before I could say anything, we'd already rounded another corner. For once, I did not ask my husband to stop the car so I could investigate an unknown on the side of the road. Although I'd only seen this canine for probably less than a second, I knew it was just too big to be a stray dog. Besides, its snout shape was all wrong, and we don't have wolves or other wild dogs here in Wales. The only thing I could think it looked like was a coyote, but that was ridiculous. We don't have them in Wales or indeed Britain at all. So we got home, and the next day, after I woke up, I did some researching. After some digging, I discovered a bulletin put out to the residents in the area we were in from a few years ago, warning locals that coyotes were in the area. Turns out I was right. It seems that a very long time ago, people, especially hunters, kept coyotes as pets or as hunting dogs, but when the exotic pet ban was placed, the owners just simply released them into the Welsh countryside. This happened a lot, it's why there's panthers in the Forest of Dean, so be careful if you go camping there. Mid-Wales is so wild, it's no surprise that the coyotes managed to survive. So, I was correct. It's just a coyote looking a bit freaky on the side of a dark road. Or was it? In Wales, there is the tale of a Gwyllgi. It is a huge black dog, not to be confused with the Cwn Annwn, which I'll talk about another time. Think of the English black shuck, or the Grim from Harry Potter. A Gwyllgi translates to the wild dog, or for a creepier translation, simply madness. There have been plenty of sightings in a Gwyllgi in both folklore and in modern accounts. A Gwyllgi is a black dog with glowing eyes, sometimes described as red eyes, that stalks the back roads, preferring to haunt the loneliest roads, appearing to travellers after dark. It is said to be an omen of a terrible and tragic death. Another name for this apparition is Cwn Cyrff, corpse dog. Other places the apparition of a Gwyllgi like to haunt are crossroads and ancient burial sites. There is, in fact, archaeological evidence of dogs in Wales being ritualistically killed to serve as some spirit guardians of the burial sites. There have been reports of a Gwyllgi haunting an ancient stone circle somewhere near Amlwch, and others have reported seeing the phantom hound in a field named Cotmore. The field is said to be haunted as there is a prehistoric stone row as well as a burial chamber found between two standing stones. The standing stones are called the Devil's Nags. Others have said a Gwyllgi appears in the Breach Farm Bronze Age Barrow Cemetery. A Gwyllgi has also been associated with water and electrical storms. Reportedly, one of the ghostly dogs haunts a small body of water called Pont y Madog. An 18th century folklorist wrote that this particular Gwyllgi terrified a woman with its, quote, earth-moving, unquote, scream. And perhaps my favourite sighting of the Gwyllgi comes from Heol Felyn Lane in Llyswarneg in the 1800s. A man named Jenkin, a farmer at Wilton Farm, was travelling home on horseback from a fair one evening, and suddenly his horse reared, tossing the old man onto the ground, and galloped away. When the residents of the farm saw the horse arriving home without its rider, they were concerned and set out to find Jenkin. They found him still on the lane, cowering on his back in the mud, insisting that a Gwyllgi had frightened his horse. Another evening, a farm servant named Anthony, who actually worked at Wilton Farm, saw the Gwyllgi himself. He said he was on his way back home when he saw two glowing eyes approaching him. When the eyes got close, Anthony saw a bizarre creature with the head and upper body of a human and the legs and lower half of a dog. These hounds are said to haunt many other roads in the area. One road has a report of a coal black dog with fiery eyes lurking on it, following any people, but if these people turned around, it will snarl and howl at them. Other roads who have Gwyllgis that will tear the clothes off anyone who gets in their way, attacking them, leaving them for dead, and those unfortunate people are only able to crawl home when dawn breaks. A folklorist in 1930 named T. Gwyn Jones wrote about his own grandmother who saw a Gwyllgi in Denbighshire. Her and her husband were riding home on their horses from Ruthin one evening, and as they passed a house said to be haunted by the locals, her horse suddenly shied and pressed itself against the hedge. As the horse trembled in fear, a very tall black dog was passing on the other side. And in the 1920s, a former sergeant in the Denbighshire Yeomanry named Edward Jones lived in a wild part of the county. As he crossed the moors to his lonely farm on horseback, he realised he was being followed by a Gwyllgi, quote, a beast of fearsome visage and bloodshot eye, end quote. Rather dramatically, he named the dog the Black Dog of Destiny, and it appeared to be following him just behind, never attacking, just following him, stalking him in the night, leaving Mr. Jones very tense and very sweaty. And Mr. William Owen writes that sometime between 1910 and 1915, his late father was cycling down a coastal path in Anglesey when he saw, quote, a fierce-looking creature the size of a calf, end quote, following him. As he came to a junction or crossroads that are heavily associated with the spirit world, it just simply vanished. Another curious case of a vanishing Gwyllgi comes from Llangefni, from a Mrs. Jones Williams. Her late husband told her that when he was a boy, he and his father were strolling down a footpath that runs through a farm called Dronwy, where they came across a big black dog that vanished into thin air before their eyes, absolutely terrifying them. It seems as though the majority of Gwyllgis don't attack, they simply follow, with, of course, the exception of the sightings in Llyswarneg. It appears to me that they are keeping a watchful eye on these travellers, protecting the dead, as these spirits are charged with protecting the inhabitants of the burial grounds. Perhaps they attack the people in Llyswarneg for getting just a bit too close to the site. What I find really interesting is that these sightings have been recorded long before coyotes came over here. Maybe we can account for the sightings of a Gwyllgi after the exotic animal ban by saying that they are coyotes, such as what I saw, but how do we explain the sightings from centuries ago? Perhaps they are just stray dogs, but then why do these dogs appear so attracted to these ancient burial sites? Are they taking up the duty of spirit guardians, as dogs in ancient times were killed to fulfill that very role? Could there be an element of the supernatural involved? Perhaps these dogs are being called to, or perhaps they just simply do this job naturally, instinctively. Let me know what you think of this myth and the sightings of the Gwyllgi in the comments. I'd be very curious to know what you guys think, and your theories as to all these different sightings from all these different counties, considering they come up and down all over Wales, from South Wales to the very peak of North Wales. I would be very interested, especially considering if it was just one county, I think I would probably just pass it off as, mass hysteria. But it is quite curious that they are seen all throughout the country when correspondence to peasants in farms and stuff like that wasn't really known. But anyway, thank you for watching. If you'd like to hear more stories like this, please subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to press the like button too, it really helps, and my pet Gwyllgi very much appreciates it. Happy spooky season!